let's get to the news because there's just so much. And so many places getting the news completely wrong, rushing to believe the terrorists and condemning Israel. We saw it over and over again yesterday, both from the mainstream media, but also from politicians. So yesterday there was a bombing. It was a missile strike, actually, in a hospital in Gaza City. And right away, as I write in this piece, not one to let facts get in the way of a chance to condemn Israel, Trudeau denounced Israel as the culprit behind the attack on the hospital. But the problem with all of this was that it was, sounds like it was Islamic Jihad who launched a missile strike. The missile strike was supposed to hit Israel. It fell short and hit a hospital in Gaza. And there's pretty strong evidence that that is the case. I should point out that I think it was last week, Hamas terrorists bombed the daylights out of an Israeli hospital and nobody seemed to care. But when there was a chance to accuse Israel of doing the same, and then denounce Israel as a violator of international law because it is illegal to target a hospital during a war, everybody rushed to judgment. They tripped over themselves to do it. Now, Justin Trudeau didn't directly, I should point that out, he didn't directly accuse Israel of doing it. What he said is, this is a violation of of international law. We'll show this clip in a second. And he said it was an attack, which means that it was intentionally done, as opposed to the accidental failings of Islamic Jihad, it sounds like. Now, some people are saying it could be Hamas. Sounds like Hamas wants to take credit for it, and Islamic Jihad is saying it. And there's some pretty strong evidence that it was Islamic Jihad, but the missile strike came from within the Gaza Strip and it fell short and hit this hospital. And again, initial reports also said 300 people were injured or killed, and then 500 people were injured and killed because you want to maximize the carnage that you can attribute to the state of Israel. But now that number looks like it's closer to 20 now that it's an accidental missile strike on behalf of Islamic Jihad. So let's show the clip from Trudeau, and then let's go into what reality really is.
The news coming out of Gaza is horrific and absolutely unacceptable. International humanitarian and international law needs to be respected in this and in all cases. There are rules around wars, and it's not acceptable to hit
Is the hospital bombing?
There are rules around war, which is a condemnation of Israel without saying Israel, because he's saying that this was an intentional attack done by Israel against Gazan civilians, and that just isn't the case. Because and I should point out also, Justin Trudeau is not a lonely idiot on this issue. I see one of his cabinet ministers, Champagne, this morning. He also said, we condemn this attack. It wasn't an attack. It was a mistaken strike by inept terrorists out of Gaza. I also saw that Jagmeet Singh, it was in that article too, he denounced this attack. Again, yeah, so bombing a hospital is a violation of international law. There must be a ceasefire now. It wasn't Israel. They didn't bomb the hospital. It sounds like Islamic Jihad. We've got a video of the IDF releasing a recording of an intercepted phone call between two Hamas operatives who discussed the failed Islamic Jihad rocket that landed on the Gaza hospital. Let's go to that.
بس بقول لك أول مرة بنشوف الصاروخ زي هيك والشظايا هذه، فبقول لك تبع الجهاد الصواريخ الجهاد الإسلامي يعني.
ايه
فهم بقولوا تعاون الجهاد الإسلامي.
انه من عندنا هذا
شكله من عندنا.
مين اللي بيقول هيك؟
بيحكوا إنه الشظايا تبعت الصاروخ إنه شظايا محلية مش زي شظايا.
ايش بتقول؟ سبحان الله من عندنا ما لقاش غير ينفجر في
عاد هذول متلاقيين من المقبرة الورا دي بثلاث محط فيهم.
ايه
ايش ده؟ بتلاقيهم طالعين من المقبرة الورا المستشفى المعمداني دي اللي هو فسه ونزل عندهم.
هو في مقبرة وراه.
المعمداني ولك عند الساحة بالضبط.
هي وين لما تدخل على الساحة؟
أول ما تدخل على الساحة تدخلش على البلد، عيدك اليمين في مستشفى المعمداني.
عرفتها.
Huh. Well, well, wouldn't you know it? The terrorists are acknowledging that it's them. And this is an intercepted phone call. So this is probably as close to the truth as you can get, that it was Islamic Jihad. And even, I don't want to say that Joe Biden is more appropriate, which is strange for a kid sniffer for me to say that, but more appropriate in waiting for the details to come out before he rushes to judgment. But I think Joe Biden got this one right. And, I guess the entire Liberal caucus and most of mainstream media got it wrong. I saw a lot of quiet editing of headlines. I think that if you guys, we go to this Biden video. If you want to dig up, I think it was the New York Times that quietly edited their headline like several times as the news came out, because they literally believed the terrorists first over Israel. So anyways, Joe Biden, I got to give him credit. The old coot got this one right.
I was deeply saddened and outraged by the explosion at the hospital in Gaza yesterday. And based on what I've seen, it appears as though it was done by the other team, not you. But there's a lot of people out there not sure. So we got to overcome a lot of things.
Joe Biden got it right, but then also he's kind of getting it wrong. So let's go to the next thing. And I'm not saying we shouldn't be doing humanitarian aid for the Palestinians in Gaza. They're going to need it. Their infrastructure, they get millions of dollars a year in humanitarian aid, and literally none of it goes to infrastructure. It all goes to terrorism. How do I know none of it goes to infrastructure? Because the Israelis have been providing food, water, and electricity to Gaza since always. And so where's all that money going? Well, it's going to terrorism, and we know that. It's why Stephen Harper cut off funding to the UN Palestinian Aid Agency, UNRWA, and Justin Trudeau returned it, is because it was very clear that none of the money was going where it was meant to go, and it was funding terrorism. And, you had this, it was also part of what they call pay for slay. You see, you don't build up the economy in Gaza if you are Hamas leadership looking for a steady supply of people willing to commit terrorism and suicide attacks. You want to keep the economy depressed and the people desperate, so that the only way to provide for your family is to commit terrorism, and then your family becomes the recipient of what's called pay for slay. So if you kill an Israeli, and preferably an IDF member, the Hamas government will pay your family, and they'll pay your family even more if you die in that attack. So it incentivizes the murder of Israelis by depressing the Gazan economy and never building it up, because you need people desperate, so that the only way that they can provide for their family is to do the thing that they want you to do, and that's kill Israelis. So some of that money that was being designated as aid with no strings attached was funding the murder of Israelis. And Biden, much like Justin Trudeau, says that he knows for sure if he returns money to these Hamas terrorists, that it's definitely going to go to milk and school books and pencils and desks, and not the thing it's always gone to, and that's terror and killing Israelis.
Announcing $100 million of new U.S. funding for humanitarian assistance in both Gaza and the West Bank. This money will support more than 1 million displaced and conflict-affected Palestinians, including emergency needs in Gaza. Announcing.
Okay. Does anybody else wonder, okay, so how do we know where this money's going to go? Is it going to go where it's always gone? Sounds like it. Why wouldn't it? I don't know why they're giving money to displaced people in the West Bank. You mean Judea and Samaria? I just came back from there. I'm not sure they need humanitarian aid. It's fine. It's fine. In fact, there was a tense peace there where there were these areas where people who live in Palestinian towns and people who live in Israeli towns were working in the same factories. Because you earn more money when you work in an Israeli factory than you would if you worked in a Palestinian-owned factory. The cost of the wages are higher, and I don't know how much of that will continue to go on thanks to the terrorists in Gaza. And in all of this, nobody who claims to be concerned about Gazan civilians are wondering, what's Egypt doing? The Israelis have said for several days now, and they've been text messaging it directly to Gazan phone numbers, and broadcasting it as best they can for civilians in Gaza to go south because they are going to start an incursion from the north. And so to go south to safety. Now, the reason they're saying go south is that's the border with Egypt. They're Muslim brothers on the other side. But wouldn't you know it? Egypt has a stronger, I think, security barrier than even the Israelis do to keep the Gazans from bringing their Hamas-infected terror into Egypt. I think it's 20 meters down into the ground. The border fence goes between Egypt and Gaza. And so while everybody is saying, Israelis, why aren't you helping the civilians of Gaza? They have been since forever with electricity, food, and water and warnings. And I think the best way to help a civilian in Gaza is to rid them of their Hamas government. But where's Egypt in all of this? Why isn't Egypt opening the borders to take in refugees? Why haven't they taken in a single Palestinian refugee? Sure makes you wonder. And let's just finish up on this President Biden clip, acknowledging the civilians on the Gaza side. Oh, it's just a tweet. Okay, even better. President Biden's tweet. Let me make myself clear. The vast majority of Palestinians are not Hamas. Hamas does not represent the Palestinian people. Well, part of that is true and part of that isn't. Hamas was elected by the Palestinian people. They are the government there, and a lot of people are sympathetic to it. And a lot of people, Gaza has a young population, much like Israel. It's an incredibly young part of the world. But a lot of people have grown up with Hamas being the only government they know, and they're taught in the schools about killing Jews and how Israel doesn't even exist. And so there has been a substantial amount of brainwashing of a very young population. And so that is a real concern. So yes, there are innocent civilians, but we should be wary of a population that has seen a substantial cultural effort to brainwash them against the Israelis. So that's the global part of this. The mainstream media and politicians rushed to blame Israel for something that terrorists in Gaza did, whether it be Hamas or Islamic Jihad. The moral of the story is it wasn't Israel with a purposeful bombing of a hospital. The bombing of the hospital on purpose actually happened to Israel, and I bet you didn't even know about that. And Joe Biden being smarter than Justin Trudeau. Who knew?
By the way, we're sending a reporter to Israel, Avi Yamini. In fact, as I speak, he's boarding the plane in Melbourne, Australia, to fly with our cameraman, Benji, to Tel Aviv. He's there to tell the truth about the war. If you want to help us crowdfund his economy class airfare from Australia to Israel for him and for Benji and for their hotel costs and other costs, we're trying to find them a bulletproof vest, for example, please go to thetruthaboutthewar.com. That's the special website we've set up, thetruthaboutthewar.com. From downtown Toronto, well, uptown Toronto actually, in front of a line of police, this is Ezra Levant for Rebel News.